Ever wanted to become a detective? Be part of an elite bomb squad. Train to become a wizard? Or survive a horror mystery? We have just the experience for you at Mystery Manila. Be trapped with friends in one room. Solve one mystery. All within an hour. With only one way out. Are you up for the challenge? We offer online team building activities via Zoom, as well as escape room games in our branches. Check out www.mysterymanila.com.
Freelancing or running your own business is not all fun and games the way most people make it out to be. Check out TaxSumo. It lets freelancers, business owners, and self-employed professionals file taxes online in minutes. That way, you can focus more on your passion and stop worrying on taxes. Sign up with us at www.taxsumo.com.
Hello mga investies at mga convincers! Welcome sa Usapang Pera Live. Ngayong gabi, pag-uusapan natin Franchising 101. Pero bago tayo magpatuloy, tayo muna ay syempre ay mag-attendance check. So pakisabi lang po, city, province, or country kung nasaan kayo ngayon para maka-shoutout naman ako sa inyo. No? Meron na actually dito bumati kanina, sandali lang at isusuot ko ang aking salamin. Ayun, ano? Si Geraldine, sabi niya, nag-good evening sa atin. Ayan, ha? So, city, province, or country, kung nasaan kayo ngayon, para po kayo ay ma-shout out natin. Okay. At ngayong gabi ang pag-uusapan natin ay tungkol sa Franchising 101. Naku, alam niyo ba, ako ay sumusubok na magkaroon din ng franchise ngayon. Ang sinusubukan natin gawin ay mag-franchise ng kabutihan. Oh, di ba? Maganda ba yun? Parang happy yun, ano? Hindi lang ang mga pagkain, hindi lang ang mga transportation, hindi lang mga kung ano-ano ang mga na-franchise natin, no, na pagkakakitaan. Pero maski ang mga mabubuting gawa, try din natin na i-franchise yan. Okay. At mamaya i-introduce natin ang ating guest. Diyos ko, mauubusan ako ng English mamaya. Kaya magtatagalog na ako, no? Susulit-sulitin ko na ngayon. Okay. Sige. Nag-hello sa atin si Kathleen. It's been a while, sabi nga ni Kathleen. Calm and serene music, sabi niya. Good evening from Tacloban City. From Mandaue, sa Cebu. Si Turtog... Totoo ba yan? Turtog Gago. Hindi ko alam kung tama yung pagkakaano pa. Nag-hi din sa atin si Benilda Insha, si Imelda ay nag-hello din sa atin, nasa Israel siya ngayon. Sa BGC sa Taguig, si Fe Edith, okay. Nag-hello din sa atin from Mandaue City, si Paul Jordan. Si Christina, in fairness, na very supportive naman pala, no, from Dubai. Ayan, nakikinig din sa atin. Si Luth, nag-good evening sa atin from Davao. Si Gino, si Ruby, si Rodelas, Joneline watching from Taguig. Halang bilis. Sino to? Uwadhay sa Dubai, nag-hello din sa atin. Si Rico yan. Ako, nabuhay si Rico yan. Good evening, watching from South Korea. Hello. Si Ayus Murillo or Luz ba yan? Murillo. Si Jamie, watching from Italy. Si Erlinda, nag-good evening sa atin. Kasama din natin ngayon si Lian from Chicago. Si Mercy sa Chicago din. Magka-Chicago sila. Si June sa Lucena. Si Ramp sa Muntinlupa. Si Pinky sa Luxembourg, in fairness. May nanonood sa atin, no? Galing ng Luxembourg. Si Janice sa Singapore. Si Imelda ay nanonood naman. Imelda Katakutan, kasama rin natin, no? Si Glenn, si Asiones, nag-hello din sa atin, si Jazz, si Lorna, sino pa? Si Ruby, at saka si, sino to? Viu. Vio Velasco, si Jazz, watching from Doha, Qatar, at si Maricel ay sa Taytay, Rizal. Sa Antipolo naman, mga kapitbahay ko to, si Mirna Puno. So hello po sa inyong lahat. Welcome po sa Usapang Pera Live. At ang pag-uusapan natin ngayon, syempre, sa Usapang Pera, magkakaperahan. Pero alam niyo naman, ang lagi kong sinasabi, di ba? Ang pagyaman na pag-aaralan at na pagtutulungan. So hindi lang tayo puro dito pera-pera ha. Kailangan din ay tumitibok-tibok ang ating puso, no? At kailangan nandyan pa rin ang ating pagmamahal sa ating sarili, pagmamahal sa ating mga kapamilya at mga kaibigan, sa kapaligiran at sa ating bayan. Ayan, ano? So dapat maganda na meron tayong social dimension pa rin dyan. So ang pag-usapan natin ngayong gabi ay tungkol sa Franchising 101. At itong guest natin ngayong gabi ay isa sa mga gwapo kong kaibigan. Oh, in fairness, di ko alam kung naintindihan niya 'yon, no? At siya ay 25 taon na sa franchise business at expert na expert din siya sa restaurant business, ano? So kung kayo ay nagbabalak na or kung meron na kayong mga existing businesses, lalong-lalo na sa pagkain at gusto nyong magkaroon o gawin ito, i-level up at gawin itong franchise, nako, itong episode na ito ay para sa inyo, no? At dahil siya po ay asawa ng isang aking kaibigang Pilipina ngayon, he is also a huge fan of the Philippines. At talaga naman feeling ko minsan ay mas Pilipino pa siya kaysa sa mga maraming kakilala natin, ano? And ayun, so from this point forward, I will be speaking in English because our guest for tonight is born in Britain but is based in Dubai and is also a member or one of the founders, I think, of Dagaz Management Consultancy, Mr. Ian Hyndman. Hello, Ian. How are you?
I'm very well, Vince. Nice to speak to you again.
Yeah. So I was just telling our viewers tonight that you're going to take over the show and tell us about what franchising is all about, right?
Take over the show sounds very grand. It's your show. And I'm very, very impressed by the spread of your viewers. It's really nice to see people from Europe and the States and as well as so many places that I sadly have not yet visited in the Philippines.
Yeah. And I think a lot of our Filipino viewers for tonight will be able to learn from the basics of franchising, especially those, and I mentioned that you have your expertise in the restaurant business, right? And of course, Filipinos are really big in that. We like eating out and we like cooking, and a lot of Filipinos are really putting up businesses in terms of food. So maybe that's one thing that they can do to level up their business and put up a franchise. So I won't take your much of your time, so that we will have more time later to discuss about your topic. So I will give the floor to you.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening, everybody, or good morning if you're in Chicago. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to talk to you. So let me leap straight in. I'll tell you a little bit about me. I know Vince gave an introduction there, but born in Britain, I've spent most of my adult life in various countries around the world, lived in 7 different countries, been in the Middle East for 15 years, but I've lived in Russia and the States for long periods as well. Most of my business background is in restaurants for 25 years and mostly franchised restaurants. But you can see some of the names there. Most of those, or many of those, you'll recognize. A lot from the States, such as Domino's, Burger King, Popeyes. But you'll also see Max's up there that I have a working relationship with. So franchising is something that I've been passionate about I got into restaurant business because I wanted to be involved in franchising. And so Domino's was where I started. But nowadays, I've been running restaurant companies in the Middle East for 12 years or so. For the last 2-3 years, I've been working as a consultant. And these are some of the things I do as a consultant: help companies to franchise their business, also help investors to find and acquire franchises. And really, that's what we're going to be mostly talking about today. Is if you're interested in maybe investing into a franchise, how do you go about doing it in a smart way so you pick the right franchise for you and get the right result for you? And then at the end, if we want to talk a little bit about how to franchise your business, if you've got an existing restaurant or shop, or could be all sorts of businesses, to be honest, then we can do that as well. So a little bit about the pros and cons of an external franchise. And by external, we mean in buying into somebody else's franchise they've set up. You know, the first thing there you can see under the pros is you're investing into an established brand name and the consumer awareness that comes with that. So what you're really getting is a head start. So if you invest in a Jollibee franchise, you should expect and you will get a lot more customers on day one than if you set up Vince's fast food bistro. So investing in an established name gives you that faster initial sales, helps you to get started. And overall, your sales are probably going to be higher than doing your own business. The second thing is you're basically getting the benefit of a proven operating system where the franchisor has operated a minimum of one business for a minimum of 2 years, and hopefully multiple businesses. And during that time, they've really seen what works, what doesn't work, tweaked the system. So basically, they've made mistakes that you then don't need to make. You can learn from their mistakes. The third thing there is the franchisor, and a franchisor is the company or the person that owns the franchise. They will be investing in marketing and in developing the menu or the product line for that business. And it's their responsibility to do that because they own the brand name. So you're not coming in cold, having to start up marketing with people who've never heard of you. After that, we've got the site design. If you're operating a shop or a restaurant, again, they've already done that. So you don't have to go to an architect and start from scratch. You don't have to decide what equipment. There will be systems and procedures in place that you have access to that'll make it quicker and more cost effective for you to actually open. And the last positive there is there'll be ongoing both operational and business management support. And so you don't pay the money and then they wave you goodbye and you're on your own. There'll be people who have experience that you can talk to, who will come and visit you and help you ensure that your business does as well as it possibly can do. Now, on some of the negatives, some of the cons we've got there is when you invest in a franchise, you will have a specific territory that you'll be limited to. So if you're building your own restaurant, your own shop, your own gas station, your own clinic, your own spa, you can decide where you want to put it. You can decide how far you want to go in terms of delivery or reaching out to customers. When you invest into a franchise, the franchisor will put restrictions on you. If you decide that you want to operate in Cebu, then that's what the agreement will state. If you then decide 2 years later that you want to open something in Makati, that's going to be outside of your agreement and you're not going to be able to do it. So that's the first negative. The second negative in terms of cost really is you have some costs that an owner operator, someone setting up their own business from scratch wouldn't have. And the main one is the franchise fee. If you decide to open a Jollibee franchise, then you're going to have to invest right at the start between 35 million and maybe 55 million pesos to get that Jollibee franchise. And obviously, if you were opening Vince's fast food joint, then, well, with Vince, you probably would have to pay him a franchise fee up front. But if you're opening your own fast food joint, clearly you don't need to pay that sum of money. So there's an increased startup cost there. And there's also an increased ongoing cost, which is called the royalty. And that's a fee you pay that covers the ongoing support you get. And 6% of sales, of net sales, is typical in terms of that around the world. Usually it's something like 6%. So your costs in those senses are a little bit higher. A good franchisor and a good franchise offer will mitigate against that, because if they're well established, they can probably buy materials and equipment at a lower cost than you could as a one-off operator. And so maybe it won't cost you any more to get started. The next issue there really is this long-term legal commitment. And, you know, if you open your own business, sure, you have a lease, but how long you stay in business really is your decision. If you take a franchise, typically the franchise agreement will be 5 or 10 or at the most maybe 20 years in duration. So one that gives you protection, but it also gives you a commitment that you have to stick to. So once you've opened a restaurant or a gas station in a particular location, you can't easily just up and change your mind and say, that's it, and we've decided we don't want to live in Cebu anymore. We're going to move to Makati, so we want to move our business there. You have a legal commitment to honor that 5 or 10 year term of your agreement. And the last thing there is restrictions on business exit. When it's your own business, if somebody comes to you and says, we love your business, we want to buy you out, then that's your negotiation. You don't really have to discuss that with anybody else. When it's a franchise, you have to discuss that with the franchisor, and they have to give approval on the new purchaser, because it's their brand name that you're effectively passing on. So the franchisor will at least get involved in that exit process, and you won't have quite the freedom you would do if it was your own business starting from scratch. So we sort of jumped in to the pros and cons, but let's just talk quickly about some of the key elements. You know, what is a franchise? And this is pretty much the same globally, and it's pretty much the same regardless of whether you're taking a restaurant franchise or a spa or a clinic or any of the other types of franchise there are, a hotel for that matter. The business concept, that means the brand name, the logos, all of the intellectual property associated with that business is owned and it's developed by the franchisor. The franchisor rents the right to operate the business to the franchisee. You don't buy the franchise. You are awarded the rights for a period, for 5, 10 years, whatever it may be. And for that right, you pay a fee, the franchise fee, and that franchise fee is associated with a legal agreement, a franchise agreement, which specifies where you can operate and for what period you can operate. And those agreements typically are sort of anything from 20 to 50 pages long. They're serious legal agreements, and you need to get a lawyer involved in those, trust me. Once you've agreed all of that, as franchisee, you operate the business under the guidance of that franchisor or their representative, who might be a regional master franchisee or what's called an area developer. So their job is to make sure that all the franchisees stick to the rules and fulfill the standards of the business, and also to make sure that the brand name that everyone's invested in is thoroughly protected. So for that right, you pay an ongoing fee to use those trademarks, and most importantly, to use the operating system. And the operating system generally is made up of a number of manuals. One will be an operations manual that will tell you how to run the business from A to Z, A to Z if you're speaking American as opposed to English. And another one might be a design and build manual that helps you to actually get your site up and running. And the third one is likely to be a marketing and brand identity manual that tells you how to market the business and what you can and can't do with the trademark and the logo and such like. And for that, you pay this royalty fee, which I say is typically somewhere between 3 and 10%, 5 to 6% is the norm. And the franchisor has the right normally to approve and reject your sites. So if you decide you want to open up a restaurant in Makati, and you say you've got a wonderful site in Greenbelt, you need to get approval for that site from the franchisor. And I mean, they would be a fool to say no, frankly, if you want to open in Greenbelt, but they do have the right to approve or reject that site, depending on how it fits with their overall business plan, and also whether from their experience, that's a good site for that particular operation. Similarly, in theory, they have the right to approve the promotions you might want to run, or the local marketing, and even key staff appointments. But a wise and a professional franchisor is only going to reject these issues if they honestly believe that the decision you're about to take is not the best one for the ongoing sustainability and success of your business and their brand. And the last thing on the list there is the franchisor takes this primary responsibility for continuously developing and evolving the product or the service, and for the big picture brand marketing. So Jollibee is responsible for promoting and marketing the Jollibee brand, and for all the sites within the Philippines and now globally. A local franchisee of Jollibee is responsible for building local community engagement and for driving immediate sales within their specific designated territory amongst their consumers. So that's pretty much how a franchise is structured. And there are variations on that. If you are buying into a hotel chain, you have the option of, for example, doing a management contract where you invest in the franchise in name, but the franchisor runs that business on your behalf. But generally speaking, most small-scale franchises, you're buying into a franchise in order to operate it yourself or through a company. Okay, Philippines. I've spoken several times at the Philippine Franchise Association annual conference and exhibition. It's an incredible event. Honestly, I was blown away the first time I attended. It's one of the biggest franchise events I've attended anywhere in the world. It's definitely on a par in terms of scale with the biggest franchise events in the UK. It's much bigger than the biggest franchise event in France, for example. So although it's the Philippine Franchise Association event, in reality, it's the premier franchise event in Southeast Asia. So if you're thinking that you want to invest in a franchise, or you want to learn more about franchising, one really, really solid route for you to take is to look at the Philippine Franchise Association. Now, you can see some of the brands there. I haven't been in the Philippines for a couple of years now, sadly. So I Googled, what are the main franchises in the Philippines as of now? And one of the problems I came up with was there are a huge number of franchise brokers and agencies in the Philippines, far more, frankly, than there are in the UK or indeed in Europe. And every single one of these franchise brokerages and agencies has their little portfolio of franchises. And depending on who you speak to, they will have a different list of what are the top franchises. But I think everyone could agree with these brands. And what you've got here are a mix of homegrown franchises, Potato Corner and Jollibee, and international franchises, 7-Eleven and Shell. The other thing you've got here is some sort of example of the scope of franchising. My background is primarily restaurant franchising, but to be honest, we could have Hilton up there as a franchise for hotels. Certainly, Marriott International is pretty much all franchised nowadays. So these are franchises, and then there are many medical services, clinics, and other sort of home services that are franchised now, especially within the Philippines. It's a very, very vibrant franchising market, the Philippines. You can see that first fact there is, there are something around 1,300 franchise businesses in the Philippines. Now, to put that in perspective, there are only about 3,000 franchise businesses in the United States, which everyone recognizes as, the home of franchising internationally, globally. So given the size of the country, the Philippines, there are far more franchise businesses in the Philippines than there are in many other countries, far more than in Britain, for example. The second fact there is, 55% of the franchise businesses in the Philippines are local franchise concepts, and 45 are international. Now, 10 years ago, that would have been at least the other way around, and the Philippines was dominated by international franchises. And if you came to the UAE, where I am today, you would find out that the UAE is still dominated by international franchises. So those numbers would be reversed for the UAE and for the Middle East in general. Although local franchises are increasing, but nowhere near as much as in the Philippines. So, that's a very positive thing for me. That's a message I've been speaking about when I've conducted workshops and talks for the Philippine Franchise Association. It's important for local companies in the Philippines to set up franchises. And the last fact there, increasingly what we're seeing in the Philippines is, and not just the Philippines, globally as well, to be perfectly honest, is instead of the old days when most franchises came from North America and from the States in particular, nowadays there are far more franchises coming out of Southeast Asia in general, Philippines in particular, but also out of Korea. I work with a company in Korea that has a 60 plus bibimbap restaurants, very traditional bibimbap restaurants. And they're looking to move out of Korea now into the Philippines and also into the Middle East. So I work alongside them. I have connections with companies in Malaysia, and the Middle East is ripe for Filipino brands, but the Philippines is also ripe for other brands coming in from these other Southeast Asian countries. So the days when if you wanted a franchise, the only place you would look would be America, thankfully are long gone. And that's me speaking as a hard-nosed Domino's guy. I love Domino's to bits, but and you would be foolish to focus just on the United States or on Canada. There are very great franchises within the Philippines, within Southeast Asia, and globally that you can look at. Right. Okay. So let's say you've decided you want to invest in a franchise. These are some of the questions that I suggest you start asking yourself in order to get that search going. The first one really, what field of business will best suit you? And when I mean best suit you, what do you have experience in? What are you interested in? And also, where is there a real opportunity in your market? Restaurant businesses are very, very competitive. It may not be the right way to go. You might be better off looking at a health-related medical service, or it could be a spa service. Anywhere where there's a gap in the market, But it's very, very important for me, I think, to stress that if you want to be a success in any business, then you need to understand it. And if you have some experience of it, that's a big, big help. It doesn't mean you have to know how to run it as a business, but at least if you've worked within that field or you know someone who has, that's a big help. The second thing there, being interested. Personally, I can't understand why anybody would invest in a business they weren't interested in. That's like putting your money in the bank and just waiting, hoping it's going to grow. If you're not interested in it, you're not going to be engaged with it. If you're not going to be engaged with it, it seems a really poor way to invest to me. The second sort of question to ask yourself is, what sort of franchisee do you want to be? What sort of business owner do you want to be? Do you want to be hands-on? Do you want to be involved? Do you want to manage the business day to day yourself? Or if you're already working, and this is the case with a lot of Filipinos that I meet here overseas. So overseas, Filipino workers they have good jobs. So they may have some extra capital they want to invest, but they're working already. So they're looking to come into a franchise as an investor, and they don't want to be involved hour by hour, day by day. I would still stress they should be interested enough to be involved occasionally, to keep involved weekly, just to see how things are going. But it's perfectly okay if you say to yourself, no, I want to invest money in it, but I don't want to run this. The next question really is, what scale of investment can you afford? This is a business investment, and some businesses work and survive, and some businesses fail, and that's just a fact of life. Research suggests that franchised businesses are more secure and more stable, but at the end of the day, that research really doesn't give you the full picture. If you invest in the right franchise for you and you work well within that framework, I believe you're going to be more stable and more successful. But if you invest with the wrong franchisor, then that's no guarantee of success at all. So you need to understand that the money you're going to invest is a business risk. So what can you afford to invest? What can you afford to risk? And that will determine, what type of franchise you want to go for. You can go for a potato corner kiosk, or you can go for a Jollibee restaurant. And the scale of investment for one is going to be here, and the scale of investment for the other one is going to be there. And wanting to be in a Jollibee is great, but if you haven't got that 55 million pesos available to do it, then you need to be honest with yourself about what you can afford. The next thing really is what geographical area you want to be involved in. If you're an overseas Filipino and you're looking to invest in a business when you go back to the Philippines, do you want to go back home? Do you want to go to Cebu? Do you want to go to Davao? Do you want to go into Manila? And if so, Makati or EDSA? Where do you want to be? So that you can start to really ask yourself, why do you want to be in that area? Is it because that's your home base, that's your family? Or is it because you believe that's a sound business area to go in where there's a gap in the market? And the last thing on the list there is, what type of people, what type of company are you comfortable working with? Because a franchise relationship is a business relationship that, to be honest, is harder in many ways to get out of than a marriage. You are committed on a 10, 20-year legal agreement, and you need to be comfortable going in that you like the people, that you respect and can work with the individuals you're going to deal with on a monthly, if not a daily basis. So, you need to do your research up front to try and find out who are these people, what is their culture as a company, and do you share values, both business values, but also personal values with that company and with the principals who are behind it. Really important that you feel comfortable, that you not only trust these people, can respect them, but you know you're going to be able to operate comfortably and fairly with them going forward. Okay, so now you've asked yourself those questions, you'll have a blueprint of what type of franchise, what type of business is probably going to be best for you. So the next thing really is, you'll have, if you're looking at a restaurant, for example, there are dozens and dozens and hundreds of restaurant franchises. I say from kiosks all the way up to full service restaurants that you can choose from. So you need to try and shortlist those down. And these are my steps to doing that. You need to look for not just an established brand, a brand that has been around for a while, that people know the name of, but also a brand that has some distinguishing features to it. And I don't mean the logo. What I mean is there is something about that brand that is, if not unique, at least is quite special. It has a brand name that's known for high quality or good value or great service, or it's known for a particular signature product or service. And the third thing there that's highlighted is a brand that's protected. If you want to operate in the States, in Chicago, and you want to take a Filipino brand, for example, and open it in Chicago, then you need to make sure as early as possible that that brand name is protected, that the franchisor is committed to operating internationally. And one sign of that commitment is that they've invested in protecting the trade name, the trademark. The second step there is to look at their competitive advantages. Those of you who've been through business classes will, remember the phrase USP, unique selling proposition. Well, I stopped using that years and years ago. In this day and age, it's pretty hard to have anything that is unique. If you really want to copy KFC's batter and marinade formula, you can find online chefs who've spent hours and days and weeks and months pretty much copying it. So saying something is unique nowadays, I think, is asking for trouble. I don't believe much is really unique, but you can look for things that are sustainable in a competitive way. So if you're looking at a food franchise, you want someone who has something that they can protect. So maybe it's a flavor pack, maybe it's a particular product, maybe it's a service. It could be an insurance package. It could be for a financial institution. Some product or services that they have developed and that they control some significant elements of that are very, very hard or prohibitively expensive to copy. So that's the second thing, something special about them that allows them to stand apart from their competitors. The third thing is there's no point investing in a business, in a franchise, if the franchisor doesn't have superior operations and business practices to their competitors. Why would you give money to somebody who's not as good as their competitors? So you need to be looking for a company that's not average. You need to be looking for a company that is, demonstrably superior in the field that they work in. Fourth thing there, you can take a risk and you can invest in a new franchise. And I know people who've done that very successfully. Obviously, if it's a new franchise, it tends to be a lower cost to get into it. But ideally, you should be looking for a history of sustained growth. Growth in the number of locations they've opened and growth in the number of sales and profit that those locations have made. And a legitimate professional franchisor should be willing to share that information with you once you've signed a confidentiality agreement, for example. If a franchisor tells you they're not willing to tell you what their average profit or their average sales are, my recommendation is walk away and go and talk to somebody else. Why would you invest into a business where right up front they're not being as helpful as they can be? And in many cases, many countries, it's a legal requirement to share that information. In the States in particular, you cannot promote a franchise unless you provide potential franchisees with a very, very detailed document that gives a real breakdown of your costs and profitability. The fifth element there is very badly typed. That's not good. Is excellent and comprehensive support systems. So if you remember back to the start, one of the things that you're investing in is the operating system. And if for that to be worth you investing in, it should detail everything from how you pick a site, how you hire your staff, how you train them, how you manage them, how you analyze the business on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Everything should be in that manual and those systems that allows you to set up a business. Let's say if it's I'll take Jollibee because I love Jollibee. I think it's an exceptional business. The way they run their business is exceptional. Exceptional on a global level, not exceptional just on a Filipino level. When I first came to the Philippines, it was to basically steal Jollibee managers to come and work for me in the Middle East because their training's that good. But also, if you take a Jollibee franchise and you work through the Jollibee system, your Jollibee will be exactly the same as a corporate Jollibee. You'll have all the advantages, and that's because the system is detailed from A to Z. And the last thing on the list there, it should have an organizational culture that you can relate to. So if you have strong personal beliefs about green issues, about sustainability, then I would strongly advise you, to try and find a company that matches your personal beliefs and philosophy. It doesn't make sense, I would suggest, to get involved with a company that has completely opposite beliefs systems. So if you're a vegan, I don't know if it's a smart move necessarily to invest in a burger restaurant chain, but I guess unless your relatives are all carnivores. So try and find a business that you can link into that works in a way that you're comfortable with. Okay, so now you're down to a short list of options. So how do you make your decision? Which one to go for? Which one is the best one for you, the best fit for you? And what we've got here are a series of questions that you should ask yourself and ask the franchisor. So you need to understand their ambition as a franchise. What's the scope of their global brand awareness today, and what do they expect it to be? What do they want it to be in the immediate, 5-10 year future? So if you look at Jollibee today and Jollibee 20 years ago, I keep talking about Jollibee, but I love the Jollibee business. So if 25 years ago, Jollibee was a Filipino company doing very, very well in the Philippines. Today, Jollibee is a global company, which happens to be founded and owned by Filipinos. And they're opening 40 Jollibees in the UK this year. Honestly, the number of UK companies who will open that number of restaurants this year, you can count on two hands. So Jollibee is way up there. So they've gone from being a national power to being a regional power. Now they're becoming a global power. So that's the awareness, and you pay for that. So you need to find out, for the brands you're looking at, where are they known? If they're not known in the market that you want to operate in, then you just got to ask yourself, you have to be aware of it, because it means it's going to take you a lot more work to establish that brand name in your market. So the next thing there, what are the average sales and profitability of their franchise operations? you have a right to know that. You have a right to do your business planning based on hard facts. So as a franchisor, you don't have a right as a franchisee to ask, you have a site in Greenbelt, tell me what the sales and profit are for that site. No, that's not reasonable. But you do have a right to say, what are the average sales across the 10 locations you have within Metro Manila? That's perfectly reasonable, so that when you do your own business planning, it's based on hard and realistic facts. The obvious things you need to ask: what are the franchise fees? If you look at, I said Jollibee is sort of 35 million to 55. A typical franchise fee for, let's say, a smaller restaurant or a takeaway delivery operation might be something in the region of $25,000 is typical in this part of the world. And for a bigger restaurant chain, so for something like Popeye's Chicken, it might be $40,000. For a regional chain here, one Filipino chain I've worked with in this part of the world, for that sort of business, you might be looking at $25,000. Royalty fee, say, there normally isn't a big difference, but if it's somewhere in the 5, 6, 7% mark, that's pretty much typical. And so you need to compare that. Big question is, do they have any other charges? Because there may be a marketing levy where you have to commit to spending 2% of your sales on marketing, or they might have a regional marketing fund, so you have to contribute 2% to that. So you need to know, are there any other fees that you have to pay? And this one here, I think you can see the cursor, do they have compulsory purchase items? This is a very, very big issue. It drives me crazy if people don't ask this question. Many franchises insist that you buy certain items either from them, the franchisor, or from specific suppliers. There's nothing wrong with that, especially if it's something like a sauce mix or some specific product that they've had designed for them. But you just need to check if the cost of that is fair. And by fair, I would suggest it should be at or below local market rates. So Domino's Pizza, for example, in the UK, franchisees buy Coca-Cola from the Domino's central commissary. And the reason they do that is Domino's gets such a break on the price because of the overall volume that the cost of that Coke is less than it would cost a franchisee to buy it from a local distributor or warehouse. So it should be at or below market rates. You shouldn't be paying more, especially for a compulsory purchase item. The next thing is, if they say they're going to support you, they're going to give you operational audits and training, that's great. But you have a right to ask them, tell us about the staff who are going to conduct that. How much experience do those staff have? If you need to be, these people are going to be telling you how to spend and invest your money. So you need to be able to trust that they have the knowledge and the experience to do that realistically. The last two questions there are two that people often just ignore. Ask customers, regardless of what you think of their operation, ask other random customers what they say about their operations, about the quality of their product and service compared to their competitors. You can't take what a franchisor says for granted. They shouldn't lie to you, but you're a fool if you don't check yourself to find out exactly what people out in the marketplace think of them. And the last thing there is, find out what other franchisees say. Find franchisees, speak to them and say, I'm considering taking a franchise for this brand. I understand you have this franchise. What are they like to work with? What are the pros? What are the cons? And that's a very reasonable thing to do. It's not unethical. It's not sneaky. That's a smart business thing to do. And again, in the States, for example, all franchisors have to provide details of franchisees that you as a prospective franchisee can contact with. So that's the last question, really. Now, at the end of that, you should be able to make an educated decision about which franchise, which type of business, which franchisor, and what scale of investment is good for you. So that's my presentation. The one thing, Vince, if I can quickly say, if you already have a business in the Philippines, which is the other side, and you would like to take it and make it a franchise, then there are lots of details that you need to go through to make that happen successfully. But if you take some of those issues we've covered, you'll see there's a framework there to setting up your business to be a successful franchise. You need to have a history of good sites that have worked well and a business that's grown sustainably. You need to have really good people who are experienced in the roles they're doing and who are committed to your brand and who can present your brand in a very positive way and help new franchisees get set up and make as much money as possible. You need to have some element of your business which is different, better, and sustainably competitive against the other companies that you compete with. It doesn't have to be unique, but it has to either be better or special, just different. And you really need to have a brand name that is not just protected legally through trademark registration, but a brand name that's protected through well-documented systems, processes, and procedures. So that Ian opening a franchise in Dubai of a Filipino business, that I can have the confidence that my business is going to be as well run as your business in the Philippines, and that I have as much chance or more chance of making a good living and a good return out of that investment as you do as the owner of the franchise. So there's a lot more to it in terms of setting yourself up to be a franchisor. But if you go through these issues we've covered here today, you'll see that's the framework. I do another class on becoming a franchisor, and I'm not sure if there's certainly not time to go through it now, but if anybody wants to contact me, I'm happy to share information about that with you. Mr. Vince, that is the end of my formal presentation.
Yeah, so many knowledge. Now I was, while you were discussing, I was listing down some of the things that I've learned, and of course, a lot of questions that I want to ask. But before we go into that, let's have a short break first.
Freelancing or running your own business is not all fun and games the way most people make it out to be. Check out TaxSumo. It lets freelancers, business owners, and self-employed professionals file taxes online in minutes. That way, you can focus more on your passion and stop worrying on taxes. Sign up with us at www.taxsumo.com.
There you go. Oh my God. You know what? When you were talking about that it's already passé to use unique selling proposition, and you were saying that, we have to focus more on sustainability, I was thinking maybe we should start using the term sustainable selling proposition. Diba?
I absolutely agree with you. I mean, sustainable selling proposition, sustainable competitive advantage. It's because people copy everything nowadays, and and they're very smart at it.
Yeah, and I think there's more to it than just copying. And although it's easy to copy now, it's also quite impossible to copy and toto, right? Because the
Yes.
environment is different, your clients are different, your staff are different. I mean, the geography is different. Yeah. So very, very interesting. But what I'm really keen to ask you, Ian, is for a franchisee, what has been the, because Filipinos really want they want to get rich quick, very, very soon. They
Everybody
want
wants
their
to.
problems solved quickly. Everybody likes that, right? So, what has been, if you can tell us a story of a franchisee that you've seen in terms of its growth and rewards because of getting a certain brand.
Well, I mean, let me take you back to my early days of Domino's in the UK. Um, my first job with Domino's was to work with about 40 franchisees in the UK. And there were a couple of young guys, young Indians, who had they'd just left university. And these two smart young men in their early 20s had studied at university, done very well. And during their time, they had been Domino's pizza delivery drivers while they were students. And they didn't need to do that. They didn't need the money. The reason they did it was they wanted to learn about Domino's as a business. They left university. They took a franchise for Domino's in a very unfashionable town. And they worked hard. They didn't say, oh, we're businessmen now, we have to drive fancy cars. They bought a beat-up old Domino's logoed car. They shared it between them, and they ran that Domino's site themselves. When I met them, I think they were about 22, 23. They told me that when they were 30, their ambition was each of them would have £1 million sitting in the bank. I thought, yeah, that sounds great. These two guys, they worked. They lived above the store. After 2 years, they opened a second site. After 3 years, they opened a third site. And to cut a long story short, one of them invited me to his wedding just about 3 months before he turned 30. And he showed me his bank statement, £1 million sitting in his bank account. And so the reason they succeeded was because of their personal work ethic, the two of them. It was also because they worked out that the Domino's system and process and brand name would give them a head start. And it did. They were my two most successful franchisees. And it worked for them. It doesn't work for everybody, but it worked for them very, very well.
Yeah. So this is an example, like if you're, the education system, for example, it's no longer cut out that you become successful just to if you finish college or the university. Because what you're saying here is even if you are not a college graduate or university graduate, you can actually get a franchise and run it as long as you have the passion for it, you know what you're doing, and you follow what the franchisor asked you to do, right?
Well, and also because the franchisor, they don't benefit if your business fails, their brand is damaged. So they have an obligation and a responsibility to support you. And so if you come from a background where you haven't gone, let's say, to university or college, and your knowledge of finance is limited, those franchisors are going to support you in that. They're going to teach you and train you about the financial knowledge you need to run that business properly and to manage it. So it gives you additional training that's specific to the business you have.
Okay. Just to give us an idea, you said that you've worked with franchisors here in the Philippines, right?
Yeah.
And how much is because a lot of our viewers are overseas Filipino workers, and maybe some of them are wondering how much would it cost? What's a good amount of investment to put in a franchise?
I'm going to sound like I'm dodging the question. The reason is, I mean, you could open a small cart operation where you have one or two people in a Shamai operation or something very small like that, or you can open a Jollibee and everything in between. And the scale of investment, what I would say is the scale of investment should be determined by what you have and what's available to you, without overstretching yourself personally, financially, and your family, and what your scope of ambition is. I know that sounds awful, but you can buy you can take a franchise for a very small amount of money. And if you guys go online, I'm a big fan of Potato Corner. If you go online and see the scope of Potato Corner franchises, they are, they go from literally a single cart all the way up to dine-in restaurants.
Yeah, as Jay is saying here, it's all about the work ethic, right? Because a lot of Filipinos' goal would be to quote unquote retire, right? I mean, a lot of Filipinos are they're so tired already of working that they want to have something that they can just get the profit from, and very minimal work. That's their goal. Would you say a franchise would be a solution for this?
Yes and no. And what I mean by that is, let's say a Domino's pizza franchise, I would say no, because the most successful Domino's that I had under my watch, if you like, the franchisee was hands-on. They were visiting 2-3 times a week at the very least. But there are other options and other franchises where the franchisor will do a management contract. And in that case, the franchisee really is investing the money, but the franchisor is taking all the headaches and for a fee. And I think that gives you a good option there for somebody who doesn't want to be involved day to day, but they want an investment that is more secure than going on their own, and with a better chance of long-term success.
Okay, so what you're actually saying here is there's two paths, right? In getting into a franchise. One is to operate the franchise yourself, or to be an investor and let the franchisor operate your business. What brands are offering those kinds of arrangement that they're the ones operating and you're just investing?
Well, I mean, all the hotels operate like that. Now, obviously, that's big scale, but all the hotels. Very few in fact, none of the big international food brands operate like that, with a management contract. Mm-hmm. So you can't go to, let's say, Popeyes. I ran the Popeyes company in Saudi. You can't go to Popeyes and say, we want to invest in a Popeyes franchise, but will you run it for us? They don't do that. Their model is they want to open sites fast, and so all of their resources are into supporting sites, not running them. So you would need to take a look. Honestly, off the top of my head, I don't know of any in particular that I'm allowed to talk about, because I need to sign an NDA to allow me to do that. But you and I have certainly discussed a business venture where management contracts is normal. There was a brand here called Cali Burger that I was involved with, and the local master franchisee for the region, they did do that. They offered management contracts. Mm-hmm. I think if you're doing that, then you need to be even more diligent about researching and considering the company you're going to partner with, because then not only are you investing in their brand, but you're actually also giving them your money to use. So it's like it's a double whammy. You've got to be even more sure they're the right people to work with.
Right. Because one particular story that I know in Dubai that actually happened is that a restaurant is trying to put up a lot of branches and trying to operate. It's like a franchise, right? Branching out and gathering investors, crowdfunding for that. What can you say about these kinds of arrangements?
I mean, that's very common in Dubai, and it's happened for a number of years here. What can I say about it without being sued? Buyer beware. If you are parting with your hard-earned savings, or worse than that, if you are borrowing in order to invest and in a business that somebody else is running on your behalf, especially, be very, very careful that they have sufficient experience, that they've been in the business long enough to show that they operate in not just an efficient and a successful way, but an ethical way. Just be careful. I tell you one thing that upsets me as an old 25-year-old veteran. A number of people, everybody knows restaurants because everybody eats in restaurants, and people think I know restaurants because I eat in them. It's easy. I can cook. I can run a restaurant. It's crazy. We'll go to the dentist, but I'm not about to start pulling out my teeth because I've visited the dentist, a couple of times. If you're investing in a business, make sure the people you're putting your money behind really know what they're doing, that they're professional, that they've been doing it for a number of years, and that you can trust them.
Yeah. So there's really no escaping to doing due diligence, right? When entering into a franchise. Yeah. Okay. We're actually running over. Yeah.
That's what a surprise.
Sorry?
That's typical of me, isn't it?
No. You were about to say something. you were about to say something?
Well, last thing I'll say there is when you're doing a due diligence, obviously there are people like me out there who act as consultants, brokers, agencies. There are many in the Philippines, many. And I'm not talking about the ones in the Philippines. I'm talking about all of us, people like me. You need to do your diligence there as well. So don't just think that because we'll go and talk to that guy Ian, and he'll find the perfect franchise for us. Brokers, consultants, agents can help you, but at the end of the day, you need to look at everybody you're dealing with before you hand over your cash and say, how much can I trust and how much can I rely on these people? There are no shortcuts, and there are no easy wins. There's just a safer route that you can go down. And franchising, I believe, does give you a safer route overall. You may not make as much money as the most successful independents, but you will lose less than the independents that fail. Done.
Okay. Did you? Yeah. Okay. So as I said a while ago, we're running out of time. Actually, we've run out of time. But of course, I'd like you to promote yourself and Dagaz Consultancy Management. If people are ready to put up a franchise as a franchisor or get you as a consultant to evaluate whether a franchise is worth getting into, how do they get in touch with you?
Okay, and you can reach us if you let me put up. Is my screen still available there?
Yeah. It's here.
Okay. Well, there. Let me just go on to the next slide there. I don't know if you can see it at the bottom there. Dagaz Management Consultancy. Ian Hyndman is my name. There's my email there if you can see it. I would be very, very happy to talk to people. We talked to some Filipinos just last night who have a restaurant business. Talk to other people who want to invest in the Philippines and are looking for franchises. So I talk too much, as you can see, that's good and bad. It's bad for people like Vince who are running tight shows like this. It's good for potential franchisees or franchisors because you get more free talk out of me than I should give. But I'm very happy to talk to people about either buying into a franchise or setting up their own franchise, bringing a franchise from the Philippines into the Middle East or Europe. So very happy to talk to people about any of those things. Dagaz is a recruitment company as well as a management consultancy. So we're very tied in with the Filipino market here throughout the Middle East.
Yeah. And if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but you're in talks with Potato Corner to be established in
I'm
Dubai?
not personally.
Oh, yeah.
I have been in the past. I've met with the founders of Potato Corner when I've been over there with the Philippine Franchise Association. I do know, and I have one of the clients that I've had in the past has acquired the franchise rights for Potato Corner for the UAE. So if the people who are listening or watching from Dubai, a Potato Corner will be coming to Dubai very, very soon, and I'm very pleased to hear it because I need to eat Potato Corner again.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much, Ian, for this wonderful knowledge that you've shared to us. And I hope that Filipinos will take the opportunity to get in touch with you. You know, Filipinos are really not fond of paying for people to to get their expertise, and then suddenly everything that they do, it explodes in their faces. And I think it's like, when you get consultants for franchises or for franchises, so that you avoid these mistakes. It's like getting lawyers also, right? So that when you make sure that all of the things that you're signing are above board. So thank you very much. Any last words?
No, listen, it's been a pleasure. I apologize for going over. I can't say I'm that surprised. Certainly Christina listening to me will give me hell about that tonight, talking too much. But I'm very grateful to get a chance to talk to people in the Philippines and elsewhere. And I wish you all well. And last word is, franchising is a good way to go, but please be careful what you do with your money.
Okay. So yes. So thank you very much, Ian. Okay. So yan mga kaibigan, nakita natin ating nako alam nyo, actually sa totoo lang, kapag yan ay nagbigay ng kanyang talk, na kayo magbabayad, mahal yan, di ba? Pero nabigay sa atin ngayon ng libre, kaya maraming salamat kay Ian. And I will be putting up the contact details of Dagaz Management Consultancy in our page para kung gusto po ninyong i-explore at kunin ang serbisyo ng Dagaz Consultancy para sa mga franchise at para na rin sa hiring. Actually, pwede rin sila sa Middle East and North Africa, I think, ay pwede nyo silang makontak. Ayan, ako si Sir Vince dito sa Pilipinas, nagsasabing ang pagyaman na pag-aaralan at napagtutulungan.